The air inside Penn Station buzzed with the usual chaos of rush-hour commuters rushing to catch their trains, vendors calling out last-minute deals, and the distant hum of a subway car screeching to a halt. Anna Carter adjusted the strap of her purse, her wrinkled fingers tightening around the handle of a small gift bag. She was on her way to see her grandson for the first time in months, and nothing could dampen her spirits. Nothing, except the three men watching her from the far end of the platform. They moved like predators, silent, calculated, waiting. The first man, tall and wiry, took the lead, maneuvering through the crowd with practiced ease. The second, bulkier with a scar running down his cheek, positioned himself behind her. The third, younger but with a sharp, menacing glare, scanned the station like a lookout. Anna didn't notice them until it was too late. A sudden movement, a rough shove. Her heart jolted as the wiry man stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "Hey, lady. You got a minute?" His voice was smooth, almost casual, but the way his hand hovered near her purse sent a surge of fear through her chest. I don't have any money," Anna stammered, gripping her bag tighter. Scarface chuckled behind her. "We don't want money. Just a little. Cooperation." The younger man edged closer, a hand slipping into his pocket. Anna's breath hitched. Was he reaching for a weapon? The crowd around them remained oblivious, too wrapped up in their own worlds. But one pair of eyes had noticed. Across the platform, a Belgian Malinois named Max sat motionless, his amber eyes locked onto the unfolding scene. Every muscle in his body was taut, ears pricked forward, analyzing. He wasn't just any dog, he was a trained canine, a former police unit, now in temporary suspension. But instincts like his never faded. A flicker of movement. The young thug's hand jerked forward. Max reacted instantly. Like a bullet, he tore across the station. The first man barely had time to register the incoming blur before Max slammed into him, sending him sprawling onto the cold tile floor. The second man staggered backward, hands raised in shock, but Max was already on him, baring his teeth in a silent warning. The third man froze, fingers still wrapped around the handle of a concealed knife. His eyes met Max's, and for the first time, fear flickered across his face. Around them, the station erupted into chaos, shouts, gasps, the metallic clang of a dropped weapon. A few passengers scrambled for their phones, recording the scene. Station security rushed in, but their focus wasn't on the attackers, it was on Max. "Get that dog under control," one officer barked. Anna, still trembling, turned to explain. "No. He saved me." Those men, but the three men were gone. The officers hesitated, scanning the crowd. Somehow, in the confusion, the attackers had slipped away, vanishing into the sea of commuters. Max stood his ground, his breath heavy, muscles still coiled as if expecting another threat. And then, a stranger stepped forward. Tall, dressed in an unassuming black coat, he moved with a quiet authority that sent a ripple of unease through Anna's spine. His eyes flickered toward Max before he spoke. "He shouldn't be here," the man murmured, almost to himself. "It's dangerous." Before anyone could respond, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind nothing but a lingering sense of dread. Anna's pulse pounded. Something about this wasn't right, and she wasn't the only one who felt it. Across the city, in a dimly lit apartment, Ethan Cole rewound the security footage, eyes narrowing as he watched the scene unfold. He wasn't focused on the attack, nor the men who had vanished into thin air. His focus was on Max, because Max wasn't just reacting to the crime. He had seen it coming, and someone wanted to make sure the world never found out. Ethan Cole leaned back in his chair, staring at the frozen frame on his screen. The image of Max, muscles tensed, eyes locked onto something beyond the immediate threat, sent a shiver through him. He had worked in law enforcement long enough to recognize when something didn't add up. This wasn't just a dog reacting to an attack, This was a dog anticipating one. And that made no sense. He tapped his fingers against the desk, his mind racing. Max had been part of an elite canine unit before his suspension. A dog with an impeccable record, trained to read danger before it unfolded. But the way he had moved at Penn Station wasn't just tactical, it was almost calculated. As if he knew exactly where to be before the crime had even happened. Ethan exhaled sharply and pulled up another screen. The video had gone viral within an hour of being posted, but then, without warning, it vanished. Not just from one platform, but from all of them. No official takedown notice, no copyright claims, just erased. Someone wanted this footage buried. Across the city, Anna Carter sat at her kitchen table, hands trembling as she cradled a cup of tea. The attack at Penn Station had shaken her, but something else lingered beneath the fear. The way those men had moved, their precision, their focus, it hadn't felt random. And then there was the stranger, the man in black who had appeared just long enough to utter those cryptic words before disappearing. He shouldn't be here. It's dangerous. What had he meant? Had he been talking about Max? Or about something else entirely? Anna's fingers traced the edge of the old photograph that had been slipped under her door earlier that evening. A man in a military uniform stood beside a Belgian Malinois that looked strikingly like Max. But the photo was old-faded, edges curled with time. This wasn't Max, but it was someone like him. And for some reason, whoever had sent this wanted her to see it. Ethan wasn't one to chase conspiracy theories, but everything about this case reeked of something bigger. He needed to know more, and there was only one place to start: the precinct where Max had last been stationed. Grabbing his jacket, he headed out, keeping his head down as he weaved through the streets. Years of working undercover had taught him how to blend in, how to move unnoticed. But tonight, something felt off. The city was alive as always, but there was an undercurrent to the air, an electric hum of something unseen. He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed an old contact at the department. The line rang twice before a gruff voice answered. "Cole, why the hell are you calling me?" Ethan didn't waste time. "What happened to Max? And don't feed me the official report. I know something's off." A heavy sigh crackled through the speaker. "You don't want to get involved in this, man. Too late." A pause. Then, a quieter voice. "He's gone." Ethan's stomach tightened. Gone where? That's the thing. No one knows. One day he was in holding, next day poof. No paperwork, no transfer orders, nothing. It's like he never existed. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Someone made him disappear. Someone powerful. Look, I shouldn't even be talking to you. Whatever this is, it's way above my pay grade. And if you're smart, you'll walk away. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, jaw clenched. Walking away wasn't an option. Meanwhile, Anna sat on her couch, staring at the flickering glow of the television, though she wasn't watching. Her mind was still stuck on that photograph. There was something familiar about it, something nagging at the back of her memory. She had seen that symbol before, the small emblem stitched onto the man's uniform. A military insignia, but not one she recognized. With a sudden resolve, she stood and crossed the room to a dusty bookshelf. Pulling down an old photo album, she flipped through the pages until she found what she was looking for: her late husband's service records. He had been in military intelligence, working on classified operations during the Cold War. And there it was. The same emblem. Her breath caught in her throat. Whatever was happening now, it had started decades ago. Ethan arrived at the precinct under the cover of darkness, slipping past the front desk unnoticed. He knew his way around well enough to avoid security cameras, sticking to the shadows as he made his way to the records department. But when he reached the door, he stopped short. It was already open, and someone was inside. Pressing himself against the wall, he listened. Papers rustling. A muttered curse. Someone was searching for something. Carefully, he peered around the corner and caught a glimpse of a man in a suit, his back turned, rifling through a stack of files. Ethan didn't recognize him, but the tension in the man's posture was unmistakable. He was in a hurry. Whatever he was looking for, it was important. Ethan stepped forward, making sure his footsteps were just loud enough to be heard. The man froze, then slowly turned. Dark eyes met Ethan's, sharp and assessing. "You shouldn't be here," the man said, his voice eerily calm. "Funny," Ethan replied. "I was about to say the same thing." The man's gaze flickered to the file in his hands before he tucked it into his jacket. "This isn't your business." Ethan's muscles coiled. "It is now." The man studied him for a moment, then exhaled through his nose. "Walk away, Cole. You have no idea what you're stepping into." Ethan smirked. "Then enlighten me." For a second, it seemed like the man might. His lips parted as if to speak, but then his expression darkened. A noise in the hallway, a door opening. The man's eyes snapped toward the sound, and in the next instant, he moved. Fast. Too fast. By the time Ethan lunged, the stranger was already out the door, disappearing down the corridor. Ethan cursed and started after him, but the moment he stepped into the hallway, he stopped. Two officers stood at the far end, watching him. One reached for his radio. Ethan swore under his breath and pivoted, ducking into a side corridor. He had to get out before he ended up in a holding cell. 10 minutes later, he was on a rooftop across the street, breathing heavily as he watched the precinct from a safe distance. His mind was racing. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just some low-level operative. He had known Ethan's name. That meant this went deeper than just Max. Pulling out his phone, he typed a single message to Anna. "We need to talk. Now." Across the city, Anna read the message, her fingers tightening around the photograph in her lap. Something was very, very wrong. And they were running out of time to figure out what. Anna met Ethan at a quiet diner on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where no one asked questions. She slid into the booth across from him, her grip tight on the old photograph she had brought. Ethan didn't waste time. Max isn't just missing. He was erased. No records, no transfers, nothing. Someone high up wants him gone. Anna's eyes darkened. Then we're dealing with something much bigger than a stolen police dog. She pushed the photo across the table. "I think this started years ago." Ethan studied the image, his sharp eyes scanning every detail. "Who's the guy?" Anna exhaled. "I don't know his name, but my husband worked with him. And look at the emblem on his uniform. It's the same one I saw on one of those men at Penn Station." Ethan frowned. "So whatever this is, it's not new." He glanced around, lowering his voice. "I ran into someone at the precinct. Government type. Knew my name, told me to walk away." Anna's jaw clenched. "Did he say why?" "No. But he was looking for something in Max's records. And he found it." Ethan's fingers drummed against the table. "If we want answers, we need to find him again." Anna's gaze sharpened. "And how do we do that?" Ethan smirked. "We make him come to us." An hour later, Ethan sat in his car outside a secure government building, tapping into the city's surveillance feeds through a burner laptop. He had a plan, one that involved stirring the hornet's nest. He found the security footage of Penn Station before it had been scrubbed from the internet, and uploaded it to an anonymous forum used by whistleblowers. Within minutes, it went viral again. And within minutes of that, he got a hit an encrypted message on a secure channel he had left open as bait. "You're making a mistake." Ethan typed back. "Then tell me why." A pause. Then, "Meet me at Pier 17. Midnight. Come alone." Ethan closed the laptop. Looks like we have an invitation. Anna insisted on coming, despite Ethan's protests. By the time they arrived at the docks, the wind had picked up, sending waves slapping against the wooden pier. A single figure stood near the edge, back turned to them. Ethan approached cautiously. "You've got my attention." The man turned, revealing the same sharp features Ethan had seen at the precinct. His voice was calm. "You shouldn't have put that video back online." Ethan folded his arms. "Then maybe you should tell me why it disappeared in the first place." The man studied him. "What do you know about Project Guardian?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Nothing." Yet, a flicker of hesitation crossed the man's face before he pulled something from his pocket, a flash drive. "This will tell you more than I can." He handed it to Ethan, then turned to leave. Anna called after him. "Wait. Why are you helping us?" He paused. "Because I was there when it started. And I know how it ends." Then, without another word, he vanished into the night. Back at Ethan's safe house, they plugged in the drive. Files upon files opened on the screen: reports, classified documents, behavioral studies. Ethan scanned them, his breath growing shallower with every line. Max wasn't just a police dog. He was part of an experiment. Anna leaned in. An experiment for what? Ethan's eyes flicked across the documents. They weren't just training dogs to detect danger. They were testing them to see if they could predict it. Anna's blood ran cold. "You're saying Max knew what was going to happen at Penn Station before it did?" Ethan nodded slowly. "And someone didn't want the world to know." The moment Ethan shut the laptop, the safe house lights flickered. Then, a sharp pop. The power cut out entirely. His instincts kicked in. "Move. Now." He grabbed the flash drive, yanked Anna's arm, and pushed her toward the back door just as the first bullets shattered the window. The crack of suppressed gunfire filled the air, glass spraying across the room as shadows moved outside. They were fast, organized. Whoever was coming wasn't here to scare them. They were here to clean up loose ends. Ethan shoved open the door, dragging Anna into the alley. "Stay low." He pulled his gun, scanning the darkness. Footsteps. Closing in. He spotted the black SUV idling at the curb, a familiar figure stepping out. The man from the pier. But this time, his stance wasn't passive. He was hunting. Ethan didn't hesitate. He fired first. The man ducked, the shot grazing the car's side mirror, but it bought them seconds. "Go!" Ethan barked, pulling Anna toward a side street. Tires screeched behind them. The SUV lurched forward, headlights cutting through the darkness like knives. They ran. Hard. Dodging through narrow alleys, hurdling trash bins, sprinting through the maze of the city's underbelly. But the SUV stayed with them, the engine roaring, closing the distance. Ethan yanked Anna into an underground parking lot, darting between concrete pillars. "Keep moving," he urged, but she was already gasping for breath. They needed an out. Fast. Then barking. Sharp. Familiar. Ethan whipped around just in time to see a blur of fur streaking toward them. Max. His coat was filthy, his ribs showing, but his eyes burned with the same fire Ethan had seen at Penn Station. He wasn't just running, he was charging. Straight for the SUV. The driver saw him too late. Max leaped, his powerful frame crashing onto the hood, claws scraping metal. The impact jolted the driver, sending the vehicle swerving. A moment of chaos. Then, Max was gone, vanishing into the shadows. The SUV slammed into a pillar, the front end crumpling on impact. Ethan didn't wait to see if they survived. He pulled Anna toward the exit, lungs burning. "Come on." They spilled onto the street, weaving through late-night traffic. Behind them, the men weren't done. More footsteps. More shadows. Ethan grabbed his phone, dialing a number he hadn't used in years. "I need a ghost exit," he panted. A beat. Then a voice replied, "You got 5 minutes." It would have to be enough. He led Anna down a side street, pushing through a rusted door into an abandoned warehouse. Inside it was pitch black. Silent. They pressed against the wall, listening. The footsteps followed, but stopped at the entrance. A low voice cursed. Then, retreating steps. Silence. Ethan exhaled, finally allowing his pulse to slow. Anna clutched his sleeve. "Max," she whispered. "He found us." Ethan nodded. "Then he just saved our asses." A low growl echoed from the darkness. Ethan turned slowly. 2 amber eyes gleamed at him from the shadows. Max stepped forward, limping but determined. He wasn't just here by chance. He had tracked them. Found them. And that meant one thing. Whatever they were running from, Max had seen it coming. Ethan crouched beside Max, running a hand over the dog's ribs. He was thinner than before, his fur matted with dirt, but his eyes remained sharp. Max had been on the run just like them, but he hadn't come here by accident. He had been searching, tracking, and now that he had found them, there was only one thing left to do: find out what he had seen. Ethan glanced at Anna. "We need to move. Now." She nodded, still catching her breath. "Where?" He pulled the flash drive from his pocket. "The facility. Wherever Max was taken, that's where we'll get answers." Anna hesitated. "You really think we can break into a government black site?" Ethan smirked. "I don't think. I know." They drove in silence, weaving through the outskirts of the city, heading toward the location hidden in their drive's metadata. A research compound disguised as an abandoned industrial plant. It was isolated, surrounded by fencing, with security cameras sweeping the perimeter. Getting in wouldn't be easy. Ethan pulled over half a mile away, switching off the headlights. "We go on foot from here." Anna swallowed hard. "And if we get caught?" Ethan checked his weapon. "Then we make sure that doesn't happen." They moved through the trees, Max padding silently beside them. The facility loomed ahead, dark and sterile, but not abandoned. Faint glows of security lights illuminated the edges. Guard patrols. High-level clearance locks. They had planned for this. Ethan had spent years breaking into places like this, and tonight would be no different. They reached the outer fence, hidden in the shadows. "Thermal cameras," he muttered. "We trip one, we're dead." Anna looked at Max. "Can he get through?" He nodded. "Oh, he's not just getting through." He pulled a small device from his pack, aiming it at the security grid. With a few keystrokes, the cameras flickered, then looped back on themselves. 30 seconds. Move. Max was the first to slip through, ducking low beneath the fencing. Ethan followed, then Anna. They pressed against the building's wall, listening. A guard approached, boots crunching against gravel. Ethan's hand went to his gun, but before he could move, Max did. The dog darted out, silent as a shadow, and lunged. A second later, the guard hit the ground unconscious. Ethan grinned. "Good boy." They were in. Ethan dragged the unconscious guard into the shadows while Anna kept watch. Max remained tense, ears flicking toward the building's entrance. He was waiting for something. Or someone. Ethan motioned for them to move, leading them toward a side access door. He had studied the facility's schematics from the stolen files. This was their best way in. A biometric scanner blocked their path, but Ethan was prepared. He pressed a stolen access card against the panel and held his breath. A red light flashed. "Denied." "Damn it," he muttered, glancing around. They had seconds before the next patrol. Max let out a low whine, then suddenly turned and sprinted into the darkness. "Max!" Anna whispered, but Ethan held up a hand. "Wait." A muffled yelp broke the silence. Then footsteps unsteady, struggling. Max returned, dragging another guard's sleeve between his teeth. Ethan wasted no time. He pressed the man's limp hand against the scanner. A green light blinked. Access granted. They slipped inside. The interior was colder than Ethan expected. Sterile white corridors stretching in both directions. Security cameras lined the ceilings, but his jammer was keeping them blind. Anna's grip on his arm tightened. "Where do we start?" Ethan exhaled, checking the files on his phone. Containment wing. If Max was here, they would have kept him there. They moved quickly, passing locked doors labeled with cryptic numbers. The deeper they went, the more unsettling it became. Some rooms held training equipment, but others were lined with monitors' live feeds tracking various locations across the city. Ethan stopped, scanning the screens. Train stations, government buildings, busy streets. They weren't just testing the dogs, he murmured. They were using them. Anna pointed at one of the screens. A timestamp from Penn Station, the night of Max's attack. The footage showed Max reacting before the men even moved. It wasn't instinct. It was knowledge. Ethan clenched his jaw. They knew he could do this. A distant alarm began to blare. And now they know we're here. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Ethan grabbed Anna's hand, pulling her toward a side corridor. Max sprinted ahead, leading them with unshakable certainty. Another locked door. Ethan swiped the stolen access card. Nothing. Heavy boots echoed closer. "Come on," he hissed, trying again. Max suddenly turned, his gaze locked on a keypad next to the door. He barked once. Ethan hesitated, then keyed in the number from the stolen files. A soft click. The door slid open. "How the hell?" Anna started, but Ethan shook his head. "Not now. Move." They slipped inside just as the guards rounded the corner. The room was dimly lit, filled with rows of containment cells. Some were empty. Others weren't. Ethan's stomach tightened. More dogs just like Max. All watching. Waiting. And in the center of the room, restrained but very much alive, was the reason they had come. Max let out a low growl. The man standing beside the cages turned slowly, a knowing smile spreading across his face. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Ethan's grip tightened on his gun as he stepped forward, eyes locked onto the man in front of him. The handler. The mastermind behind Project Guardian. The man's smile never wavered, his hands casually resting behind his back as if he had been expecting them. "You've caused quite a mess," he mused, glancing at Max. "I knew he was special, but even I underestimated him." Ethan leveled his weapon. "Let him go." The handler chuckled. "You're missing the point, Cole. You think this is about one dog? Look around you." He gestured toward the cages lining the room. More Belgian Malinois, each one watching with unnatural focus. Max wasn't our first, and he won't be the last. A shiver ran down Anna's spine as she realized the truth. These weren't just highly trained canine South. They were something else. Something engineered. Ethan didn't lower his weapon. "You took a loyal police dog and turned him into a lab experiment." The handler sighed. "Loyalty is useful, but prediction is priceless. These dogs don't just react to danger, they see it before it happens. Imagine the possibilities." His gaze darkened. But Max? He was too unpredictable. He started making his own decisions. "We can't have that." A soft beep echoed through the room. Security override. The doors behind them locked. The cages hissed open. Ethan's pulse jumped. "Anna, move." The first dog lunged. Not Max, but another one of their experiments, trained to obey without question. Ethan barely dodged in time, crashing into a metal console. Anna ducked as another tore toward her, but Max intercepted, slamming into the attacking dog with a snarl. Chaos erupted. The trained dogs moved like shadows, fast and lethal. Ethan fired, taking out the control panel, sending sparks flying. The room plunged into emergency lighting. "Get to Max," he shouted, rolling under a table as another dog snapped at his arm. Anna scrambled toward the center, hands shaking as she fumbled with Max's restraints. Come on," a warning growl. She turned just in time to see the handler pulling a gun. Ethan reacted first. A single shot rang out. The handler staggered, clutching his shoulder. Snarling, he slammed a fist against a nearby switch. A high-pitched frequency filled the air. The attacking dogs froze, their bodies stiffening. Max flinched but didn't fall. "That signal," Anna gasped. "It's controlling them." Ethan fired again, but the handler ducked, staggering toward a hidden exit. "You think you're saving him?" he spat. "You have no idea what you've unleashed." The door hissed open. He vanished into the darkness. Ethan turned to Anna. "We need to shut that frequency down." Max barked once, his eyes darting toward an auxiliary panel. Ethan didn't hesitate. He fired into it. The room shuddered. The signal died. The attacking dogs wavered, blinking in confusion, then slowly backed away. Free. Anna finally unlatched Max's restraints. He leapt forward, pressing his forehead against her hand for a brief second before turning to Ethan. "Time to go," Ethan muttered. He grabbed a flash drive from the shattered console evidence of everything. They raced for the exit. Alarms blared. The facility was locking down. Guards stormed the corridors. Max took point, weaving through the chaos with flawless precision. Ethan fired, dropping 2 men as they reached the outer doors. Anna gasped as bright floodlights burst to life outside. More vehicles. More armed men. They were surrounded. Ethan clenched his jaw. Not like this. Then, Max moved. Not to run. Not to hide. He stood at the entrance, staring at something unseen. A low, deep growl rumbled in his chest. Then, suddenly, the guards hesitated. A flicker of uncertainty. The handler's words echoed in Ethan's head. "They see danger before it happens." The guards shifted uneasily. Then, as if sensing something beyond human understanding, they turned and fled. The road cleared. Ethan exhaled sharply. "I don't know what just happened," Anna whispered. "But I think they did." Max let out one final bark, then took off running. They followed. Behind them, the facility erupted into flames. Smoke curled into the night sky as the facility burned behind them, a towering inferno consuming years of classified research. Ethan drove, gripping the wheel tightly, eyes flicking between the rearview mirror and the dark road ahead. Anna sat beside him, silent, her mind still reeling. In the back seat, Max lay stretched out, his breathing steady despite the chaos they had just escaped. He was free. But the war was far from over. They drove for hours, putting as much distance between themselves and the wreckage as possible. Eventually, they stopped at a rundown motel on the outskirts of a small town. It wasn't much, but it was safe. Ethan checked them in under false names, then carried Max inside. The dog stirred slightly, his amber eyes scanning the room before settling. Even now, even after everything, he was still watching. Still sensing. Anna sat on the bed, rubbing her temples. "What now?" Her voice was hoarse, exhausted. Ethan set his gun on the table and exhaled. "We figure out what we have." He pulled out the stolen flash drive, plugging it into his laptop. Files flooded the screen: documents, surveillance footage, internal memos. Proof. The full extent of Project Guardian laid bare. Ethan clicked on a folder labeled Omega Protocol and scanned the files. His stomach turned. They weren't just training dogs to predict threats, he murmured. They were using them to manipulate events. Political assassinations, security breaches. If these dogs saw danger before it happened, someone was deciding which threats were allowed to play out and which weren't. Anna's breath hitched. You're saying they were orchestrating disasters? Ethan's jaw clenched. And they weren't finished. He scrolled through a list of upcoming operations. Some were already in motion. The Penn Station incident had just been a test run. They needed to expose this. Get it to someone who could blow it wide open. But before Ethan could say another word, his laptop screen flickered. Then black. Files erased. Every single one. He shot to his feet. No. His fingers flew over the keyboard, but it was gone. Wiped remotely. They had been watching. The motel phone rang. Ethan and Anna exchanged a glance. Slowly, he picked up. Silence. Then, a familiar voice. The handler. You really thought you could outrun this? Ethan gritted his teeth. Where are you? A soft chuckle. Everywhere. A pause. I warned you, Cole. Max isn't special. He's just the beginning. You burned one facility. That won't stop the program. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. We have the truth. You had the truth, the handler corrected. Now it's gone. And soon you will be too. The line went dead. Anna's face was pale. They're coming. Ethan grabbed his gun, but Max was already moving. The dog stood at the door, muscles tense, ears flicking toward the window. Listening. Then, a deep growl rumbled from his chest. Ethan's pulse spiked. Max knew. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.